Okay, so think about this for a sec. How often, like every day, do you find yourself needing to explain something?
Oh, constantly.
Right. Whether it's, a project at work or maybe helping your kid with homework or even just sorting out a simple misunderstanding with a friend.
Yeah, that skill. Being able to explain things clearly, it's everywhere. It's fundamental.
Mm.
And when you think about what happens when it works well, projects go smoother, people actually understand each other.
Mm.
It's not just nice to have, it's pretty essential.
Totally. And that brings us nicely to today's deep dive. We're digging into this source you brought, The Art of Explanation by Ross Atkins.
Mhm.
Think of this as like our focus session to give you some really practical tools to communicate better, more clearly, more effectively.
Yeah, and Ross Atkins, well, if you've seen his stuff on the BBC, Outside Source, or The Media Show,
Oh, yeah, those viral explainers.
exactly. He's brilliant at taking really complicated stuff and just making it make sense, distilling it down.
And he also founded that 50.50 project at the BBC, right, about representation.
That's the one. So he's clearly thought a lot about clear, balanced communication from, multiple angles.
So our mission today basically is to pull out the key strategies, the core ideas from his book, stuff you can use right away to, well, explain things better, whether that's in a big presentation or just, talking one-on-one.
Right. We're going to look at his 7-step process for explaining things
Okay.
and also how to handle explanations when you're, like, put on the spot, dynamic situations.
Ah, yeah, the unexpected questions.
Mhm. And finally, what actually makes an explanation good. He has this list of 10 essential attributes.
Okay, sounds like a solid plan. So let's start maybe with the big picture. Why?
Yeah.
Why put the effort into getting better at explaining? What's the real payoff?
Well, it's a good question. Atkins puts it really well himself, actually. He says something like, explanation helps us establish what we want to say, to find and distill the information, and to figure out the best way to give it to people. So it's not just about, broadcasting information.
Right. It's also clarifying it for yourself first.
Exactly. And making sure it actually connects, that it resonates with whoever you're talking to, whether you're presenting data or, like you said, sorting out a conflict. Good explanation builds that foundation for, well, understanding and progress.
It's making sure the message is received, not just sent.
Okay.
And Atkins says the absolute first step. It's all about the audience.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
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 This is his setup phase, step one. You could have the most brilliant idea or the clearest data, but if you don't think about who you're explaining it to,
It just gets lost.
it can totally get lost. Yeah. You've
Yeah.
got to consider, like, what do they already know or not know? What's the best way for them to get it? Are they visual learners?
Hmm.
Do they need the bottom line first?
There was that example in the source, right, about explaining a project update to colleagues.
Mm-hmm.
Some tech wizards, some maybe not so much.
Exactly.
Yeah.
You wouldn't just dive into the super technical jargon with everyone. You'd maybe frame it differently first. Give some context, maybe use an analogy that everyone can grasp before you get into the weeds.
So doing that prep work on the audience.
Yeah, it ensures everyone's kind of on the same page, or at least can follow along. The key questions he says to ask are, who am I explaining this to? What do they really need to know? And how do they prefer to get information?
Mm.
And he notes, like, if you nail down your purpose for the explanation early on, that helps make so many other decisions down the line.
Okay, so that's the setup, understanding the audience, the purpose. What's step 2 in his process?
Step 2 is find the information. Pretty straightforward, really.
Okay, gather your facts.
Yeah, go out and collect all the relevant stuff, the data, the details you need. He stresses using, reliable sources. Build a solid base.
Right, don't just wing it with assumptions.
Exactly. At this stage, it's mostly about gathering. Don't worry too much yet about filtering a structure. Just get the raw materials.
Got it. Like loading up the pantry before you decide what meal to cook.
Yeah, good analogy.
And then step 3 sounds crucial. Distill the information.
Oh, totally crucial. This is where you shift from just having info to figuring out what actually matters for this specific explanation for this audience.
The filtering stage?
Precisely. Atkins suggests going through everything you gathered, maybe multiple times, and asking, does this directly support my purpose? Is it essential?
Cutting the fluff.
Yeah. Refining it down, making it digestible. You want to avoid overwhelming people with stuff that's, like, interesting, but not strictly necessary.
Yeah.
He talks about including essential detail, but keeping it manageable.
Okay, makes sense. So you've got your core distilled info. Step 4 is organize the information, structure time.
Exactly. Now you take those essential pieces and you arrange them. You build a logical flow.
Like an outline.
Kinda, yeah. Or like creating connected strands.
Yeah.
Think about the narrative. How does one point lead naturally to the next? He says, it's about the flow and how well the whole thing hangs together.
Right, so it's not just a list of facts. It needs to connect.
Definitely. Good organization makes it so much easier for the audience to follow your thinking and, actually remember it.
Okay, then step 5, link the information. This is where the writing or maybe the speaking script actually happens.
That's right. Now you start crafting the actual explanation. You're putting it into words.
Using simple language, presumably.
Ideally, yeah. Simple, direct, relatable language.
Yeah.
Keeping that audience in mind from step 1. You're using transitions, linking phrases, basically weaving those organized strands together into a smooth, coherent narrative.
Gotcha. Making it flow. Step 6 is tighten.
Yeah.
Editing.
Yep. The refinement stage. Absolutely vital. You go back through it with a critical eye.
Looking for what?
Clarity, precision, conciseness. Is anything ambiguous? Too much jargon, any repetition? You're cutting, polishing, making sure every word counts.
Mm-hmm.
Atkins really recommends getting someone else to look at it here, a fresh perspective.
Oh, good tip. Yeah, you get too close to it yourself sometimes.
Exactly. They might spot something you totally missed.
Yeah.
It's about making it as sharp and impactful as possible.
And the final step, number 7, is delivery.
Right. Because it's not just the words on the page, is it?
No, it's how you actually present it.
Totally. Your tone of voice, your pace, how clearly you speak, any visuals you might use, slides, props, whatever, and just your overall engagement with the audience.
Practice comes in here, I guess.
Hugely important. Rehearsing it, getting comfortable, being ready to adapt based on, how people are reacting, making sure the final delivery is clear, engaging, and hits the mark for those listeners.
Okay, that 7-step process feels really solid for like planned explanations, presentations, reports.
Mm-hmm.
Well, what about those moments when you're just caught off guard, like a Q&A or a sudden question in a meeting? He calls that dynamic explanation.
Yeah, exactly. And that requires a slightly different skill set, or at least a different kind of preparation. Well, the core principles, knowing your stuff, thinking about the person asking, still apply. But you need to be able to access and structure that information much faster, on the fly.
Right. No time for the full 7 steps then.
Not in the same way. He sort of adapts the steps for dynamic situations. It's more about being able to verbalize your key points clearly. Maybe using memory tricks like chunking information.
Oh, like grouping related ideas together in your head?
Yeah, or even memory palaces if you're into that. Things to help you recall the key information quickly. And a big part is anticipating potential questions before they even come up.
So it's like having pre-built mental building blocks you can quickly assemble.
That's a great way to put it, yeah. You're still doing a mini setup by understanding the question, drawing on your distilled info, quickly organizing your thoughts mentally, and then linking them as you speak.
And the tighten step is happening in real time, I suppose. Choosing your words carefully as you go.
Exactly. Aiming for clarity and conciseness right there in the moment.
And anticipating questions seems key for that dynamic stuff. Oh, absolutely critical. Think through. What are people likely to ask? What are the tricky questions? What are the follow-ups?
So you have some pre-thought-out answers, or at least information strands ready.
Yeah, have those core points ready, but stay flexible. Don't just rigidly stick to a script if the question goes somewhere unexpected. And he also mentions having some escape phrases.
Escape phrases, what for?
For questions that are, like, way off topic or maybe just not relevant right then. Polite ways to acknowledge the question, but maybe defer it or gently steer back to the main point.
Okay. A way to handle curveballs without getting totally derailed.
Mm-hmm.
Interesting. Okay, so we've got the process planned and dynamic. What about the qualities of a good explanation? He lists 10 attributes.
Yeah, these are like the ingredients, the characteristics you're aiming for.
Okay, let's hear them.
All right, so simplicity, clear language. Essential detail, just enough, not too much. Complexity, acknowledging it when needed, not oversimplifying.
Right, sometimes things are complicated. Exactly. Then, efficiency being concise, precision accurate language, context giving necessary background, no distractions avoiding jargon or tangents, engaging delivery making it interesting, usefulness to actually answering the audience's needs, and finally, clarity of purpose making your goal obvious.
Wow, that's quite a list.
It is, but they all work together. He sums it up nicely. A good explanation will include the essential details and the essential complexities and do so in the simplest language possible.
Finding that balance.
Yeah.
Essential details, essential complexities, simple language. That's the art, I guess.
That's definitely the challenge, yeah. And that engaging delivery point seems to pop up again and again.
Right. It's not enough to just be accurate.
No. Atkins says good explainers are engaging, not only informative, you got to hold people's attention.
How? What techniques does he suggest?
Things like using clear storytelling, maybe using visuals, but, judiciously don't just overload with slides.
Hmm.
Using hooks to grab attention at the start. Using good joining phrases so it flows well. Even things like back announcement.
Hey, tech announcement.
Yeah, like briefly saying, okay, so we've just covered X, now let's look at Y. Just helps reinforce things. And varying your tone, your pace, emphasizing keywords, little things that keep people tuned in.
Makes sense. It's about keeping the listener with you.
Absolutely. And the final piece he really hammers home is practice and feedback.
Can't get good without doing it, right?
Pretty much. Rehearsal builds fluency, it builds confidence. The more you practice explaining something, the more natural it becomes.
And feedback. Asking people if they actually understood.
Yes. Actively seek it out. Ask, was that clear? What parts were confusing? It's invaluable for seeing where you can improve. He says something like, the process of trying and failing will increase the chances of you getting it right. Don't be afraid to not nail it the first time.
Learn from the misses. Okay, so if we're wrapping up this deep dive into the art of explanation, what are the absolute must-remember points for you?
Okay, well, first, I'd say realizing that explaining well is a skill you can learn and improve with a structured approach, like his 7 steps.
Right, it's not just magic.
No. Second, that audience understanding is paramount.
Yeah.
Everything flows from that setup phase. Know who you're talking to.
Mm-hmm.
Third, be ready for those dynamic moments. Prepare mentally so you can adapt and explain clearly on the fly.
Yeah.
And fourth, keep those 10 attributes in mind. Aim for simplicity, clarity, usefulness, engagement, all that stuff. It's the checklist for a good explanation.
It really boils down to being more deliberate, more thoughtful in how we share information, doesn't it?
Yeah. Less broadcasting, more connecting. Like Atkins says, get it right, and you can radically improve how you communicate. Explanation is an art.
It really is. Okay, so a final thought for you listening. As you think about all this, maybe consider which of those 7 steps feels like the biggest hurdle for you personally. Or which of those 10 qualities, simplicity, engagement, context, are you going to try and focus on next time you need to explain something important? Just reflecting on that might be a good first step.
Definitely. And, if this has piqued your interest, digging into the full book, The Art of Explanation, would obviously give you a much deeper dive than we could cover here. Lots more detail and examples in there.